You ever notice how the guys who seem to care the least often get the most attention from women? And I'm not talking about jerks or players. I'm talking about men who just seem comfortable saying no, comfortable being themselves, comfortable walking away from anything that doesn't feel right. Meanwhile, the nice guy who bends over backward, who always responds immediately, who never wants to upset anyone, he's often stuck wondering why she lost interest. Here's something that nobody really talks about openly, but it's one of those truths that once you see it, you can't unsee it. Women aren't actually looking for someone who agrees with everything they say. They're not searching for a man who drops his entire life the moment she sends a text. What creates real attraction, the kind that lasts beyond the first few dates, is something completely different. It's self-respect that shows up as clear personal standards. And I know that might sound counterintuitive. You've probably been told your whole life to be accommodating, to be flexible, to prioritize making her happy. But think about it this way. Have you ever respected someone who had no backbone? Have you ever admired someone who constantly apologized for taking up space? Probably not. And neither does she. Today, I want to walk through exactly how this works psychologically, and more importantly, how understanding this can completely change the way you show up in relationships and dating. Because what I'm about to share isn't manipulation or game playing. It's about becoming the kind of person who naturally commands respect because they respect themselves first. Let's start with something simple but profound. Think about your calendar right now. If someone you're interested in romantically reached out and asked you to meet up tonight, would you drop what you're doing? Would you cancel plans with friends or push back that project you've been working on? A lot of men would, thinking it shows interest and enthusiasm. But here's what actually happens in her mind when you're always available at a moment's notice. She starts to wonder what else is going on in your life. Not in a judgmental way, but in a curious way. Because people who have rich, fulfilling lives, people who are genuinely engaged in meaningful work, friendships, hobbies, and personal growth, those people aren't sitting around waiting for a text. They're busy building something. And that energy, that sense of momentum in your own life, it's incredibly attractive because it signals that being with you means joining something already in motion rather than becoming someone's entire world. I had a friend once who was dating this woman he really liked. Every single time she reached out, he'd respond within minutes. Every time she suggested getting together, he'd rearrange everything to make it work. And for the first couple weeks, things seemed great. But then something shifted. Her texts became less frequent. Her enthusiasm cooled. And eventually, she told him she needed space, that things were moving too fast. He was confused because he thought he was doing everything right. What he didn't realize was that his constant availability was sending an unintended message. It communicated that he didn't have much else going on, that she was the most important thing in his life before she'd even earned that position. And that's a lot of pressure to put on someone. It also eliminates mystery and anticipation. When someone knows they can reach you anytime and you'll always be there, there's no space for them to actually miss you or wonder about you. Now, I'm not saying play hard to get or ignore people you care about. What I'm saying is that having a life you're genuinely invested in, one that doesn't revolve around someone else's schedule, naturally creates the kind of dynamic where both people have space to breathe and actually look forward to seeing each other. Your time matters. How you spend it reflects what you value. And when you treat it as valuable, other people do too. Here's another thing that trips up a lot of good men. They struggle with saying no because they don't want to disappoint anyone. So when someone asks them to do something they don't really want to do, they say yes anyway and then feel resentful about it later. Or they say no but drown it in so many apologies and justifications that it barely even sounds like a no. Imagine this scenario. She invites you to some event that honestly doesn't interest you. Maybe it's a party where you won't know anyone, or maybe it's something that conflicts with commitments you've already made to yourself. A lot of guys will launch into this long explanation about why they can't make it, apologizing repeatedly, offering alternatives, basically doing everything they can to soften the rejection because they're terrified of how she'll react. But here's what that actually communicates. It says you're not comfortable with your own decisions. It says you need her approval to live your life the way you want to live it. And while she might consciously appreciate the politeness, subconsciously it registers as uncertainty and lack of self-trust. Contrast that with a simple, direct response, something like, I appreciate the invite, but I won't be able to make it. Let's plan something soon, though. No excessive apology, no over-explanation, just a clear answer delivered with calm confidence. That kind of response demonstrates that you're comfortable making decisions that serve you, even if they're not what someone else wants to hear. And that self-assuredness is magnetic because it suggests you're someone who knows what you want and isn't afraid to honor that. Women test this all the time, usually without even realizing they're doing it. It's not malicious. It's actually a smart evolutionary mechanism. They want to know if you're solid, if you can be trusted to stay grounded when things get challenging. And these tests often come in the form of small challenges to see how you'll react. Maybe she makes a sarcastic comment about something you care about. Maybe she playfully teases you in front of others. Maybe she pushes back on something you said just to see if you'll immediately fold or if you'll stand your ground. And most men fail this test in one of two ways. They either get defensive and reactive, proving they're easily rattled, or they immediately back down and agree, proving they're not confident in their own perspective. The man who passes this test is the one who can hear the challenge, stay completely calm, and respond from a place of quiet confidence. Maybe with humor, maybe with a knowing smile, maybe by gently but firmly holding his ground without needing to prove anything. That kind of unshakable presence is rare. And when a woman encounters it, something shifts in how she perceives you. She realizes you're not performing or posturing, you're just genuinely comfortable in your own skin. I remember watching this dynamic play out with a colleague of mine. He was on a date, and the woman made a comment about how his career choice wasn't very ambitious. A subtle dig, probably testing to see how he'd respond. A less secure guy might have gotten defensive, launched into a speech about why his career is actually great, or maybe even agreed with her and downplayed his own choices. But this guy just smiled and said, "Sounds like you've got strong opinions about careers. That's interesting." Then he changed the subject. He didn't take the bait. He didn't need to defend himself. He acknowledged her comment without giving it power over him. And then he redirected the conversation. And you know what happened? She immediately softened. She later admitted she was impressed by how unaffected he was, how he didn't seem to need her validation. That calm centeredness made her feel like she was dealing with someone who actually knew himself. Here's something else most men get wrong. They think they need to explain every decision, justify every choice, and make sure everyone understands their reasoning. But excessive explanation often reveals insecurity. When you truly trust your own decisions, you don't feel compelled to convince everyone else they're right. Think about leaders you respect. They don't spend hours explaining why they made a particular choice. They make the decision, communicate it clearly, and move forward. That efficiency and decisiveness creates trust because it shows they're not second-guessing themselves or looking for external validation. They've thought it through, they're confident in their conclusion, and they're taking responsibility for the outcome. In relationships, this shows up in simple ways. When you decide you're not going to a particular event, you don't need to write a paragraph about why. When you choose how to spend your weekend, you don't need permission or approval. When you set a boundary about something that doesn't work for you, you state it clearly and then let it stand without apologizing for having needs and preferences. This doesn't mean being inflexible or inconsiderate. It means trusting yourself enough that you don't feel compelled to justify your existence or your choices to everyone around you. And when a woman sees that you operate from that place of quiet self-trust, it's incredibly attractive because it suggests emotional maturity and stability. Now, let's talk about something that might be the most important piece of all this: your sense of purpose beyond the relationship. I've seen countless men lose themselves the moment they start dating someone they really like. Their hobbies disappear. Their goals get put on hold. Their entire world starts revolving around this other person. And while that might feel romantic in the moment, it almost always backfires. Because here's the thing, a woman doesn't actually want to be your entire reason for living. That's suffocating. What she wants is to be with someone who has their own direction, their own passions, their own mission in life that they're actively pursuing. She wants to add to your life, not become your life. When you have that sense of purpose, when you wake up excited about projects you're working on, goals you're chasing, growth you're experiencing, you become naturally attractive because you have forward momentum. You're going somewhere. And being with you means she gets to be part of that journey rather than being responsible for giving your life meaning. I knew a guy who was absolutely obsessed with his music. He played in a band, spent hours writing songs, constantly worked on improving his skills. When he started dating someone, he made time for her, sure, but he didn't abandon his music. He didn't cancel rehearsals every time she wanted to hang out. His music was part of who he was. And she knew that going in, and you know what? She loved that about him. She loved watching him do something he was passionate about. She loved that he had depth and dimension beyond just being her boyfriend. Contrast that with the guy who drops everything the moment a relationship starts. His identity becomes being her partner. And while that might seem sweet initially, it eventually becomes a burden because now she feels responsible for his happiness and fulfillment. That's way too much pressure. Your purpose, whatever it is, work, creative pursuits, fitness goals, building something, learning something, becoming someone, that purpose is what makes you interesting and attractive long term. It gives you something to talk about, something to be excited about, something that energizes you independent of the relationship. And that energy is contagious. Here's another subtle but powerful dynamic. When a woman gets emotional, most men immediately try to fix it. She's upset about something, so you jump in with solutions. You tell her it's not a big deal. You offer advice. You try to logic her out of her feelings. And almost always, that makes things worse. Because in that moment, she's not looking for solutions. She's looking for someone who can be present with her emotions without being overwhelmed by them. She wants to know that you can handle her intensity, that her feelings don't scare you or make you uncomfortable, that you're solid enough to just be there without needing to change how she's feeling. The man who can sit with a woman while she's upset, who can listen without interrupting, who can stay calm and grounded while she processes her emotions, that man becomes a safe harbor. He proves that he's not going to run away when things get messy. He shows that he trusts her to work through her own feelings without needing to rescue her. This isn't about being passive or indifferent. It's about having enough emotional stability that you don't get pulled into the storm with her. You remain the calm presence that allows her to feel what she needs to feel and know she's not alone in it. And that kind of emotional strength is rare and incredibly valuable. Let me share something about mystery and revelation. In the early stages of dating, there's a temptation to share everything about yourself immediately. You want her to know you, to understand you, to see all your depth right away. So you open up about past relationships, childhood trauma, insecurities, fears, everything. And while vulnerability is important eventually, timing matters. Mystery creates interest. When you reveal yourself slowly, layer by layer, you give someone a reason to keep coming back. They sense there's more to discover, more depth to explore. It's like reading a great book. You don't want all the answers in the first chapter. You want the story to unfold gradually, building intrigue and investment along the way. This doesn't mean being closed off or dishonest. It means being intentional about intimacy, sharing things when they're relevant and when trust has been built, rather than dumping your entire history on someone before they've earned that level of closeness. Because deep sharing should feel like a gift, not a burden. I watched a friend make this mistake once. First date. And he's talking about his difficult relationship with his father, his anxiety issues, his financial struggles. All real, all valid, but way too much, way too soon. And the woman was visibly overwhelmed. Not because she lacked compassion, but because that level of emotional intensity on a first date doesn't give the relationship room to breathe and develop naturally. The most magnetic people I know are those who reveal themselves gradually. They're open and warm, but they don't front load all their complexity. They let people discover them over time, which creates a sense of earned intimacy that feels special and valuable. So what does all of this really come down to? It's about self-respect that's so genuine it doesn't need to announce itself. It's about being comfortable enough in your own skin that you don't mold yourself to fit what you think someone else wants. It's about having a life that's rich and full enough that a relationship enhances it rather than defines it. When you operate from this place, something remarkable happens. You stop trying to convince anyone to like you. You stop performing or managing perceptions. You just show up as yourself, take up space without apology. Honor your own needs and boundaries and trust that the right people will appreciate that while the wrong ones will filter themselves out. And here's the beautiful irony. The moment you stop trying so hard to be attractive is often the moment you become most attractive. Because authenticity, self-trust, and genuine self-respect are magnetic in a way that no amount of trying to impress someone can ever be. Think about the men you most respect in your own life. Chances are they're not the ones constantly seeking approval or changing themselves to fit in. They're the ones who know who they are, what they stand for, and what they will and won't tolerate. They've built lives they're proud of. They have standards, and they're comfortable letting those standards guide their decisions even when it's uncomfortable. That's the energy that creates lasting attraction. Not tricks or techniques, but the quiet confidence that comes from genuinely liking and respecting yourself. From knowing your worth isn't dependent on whether any particular person chooses you. From building a life so fulfilling that a relationship is something you want, not something you need. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. Work on becoming someone you respect. Pursue things that matter to you. Set boundaries that protect your peace and your purpose. Say no when something doesn't align with your values. Stay grounded when people test you. Keep moving forward on your own path, even when distractions arise. Do those things not as a strategy to attract someone, but as a commitment to yourself. And you'll find that the right people are naturally drawn to that energy. Because what you're offering isn't performance or persuasion, it's something much rarer and more valuable. You're offering the truth of who you are and the invitation to join something real.